Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rectified Podcast. This is the very first episode of the new Founder Stories series. And I'm so excited to have a special guest today who will tell us all about his journey in the direct to consumer brand world. Without further ado, let me introduce Nima Sotoadeh from Broya. Nima, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, and I can't wait for you to share all about your journey with our audience. Let's kickstart this episode by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I guess who I am, I'm the founder of Broya. I'm from Canada. Broya is a Canadian company. I've been around for like over 7 years now. It's been quite a journey. We're fully bootstrapped. Still pretty small team, but doing multiple seven figures in revenue. And that's a
Yeah.
bit of a background.
Let's tell our audience what Broya is and what kind of products do you sell?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we make organic and grass-fed bone broth, and we source these bones from local Canadian farms, and we only sell in Canada right now. And yeah, we have 6 flavors. 4 of them are in pouches, and they are more of a flavored product, like something that you won't really get anywhere else in the market, or even tough to replicate at home even. And then our other 2 flavors are in a new packaging format, in a ready to drink can, 250 ml can. And those are more of your classic bone broths that you might make at
Mm.
home.
Okay. Let's start by talking about how you got this idea. Like bone broth, it's something that's unconventional, although it's trendy today. How did you decide that this is what you want to do?
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to whenever I meet new people and tell them I sell broth or juice made from bones. It's like it's always an interesting conversation. And but yeah, I mean, the way I got into it, I've always been into my health. I've always been into thinking about how I could be a healthier person. I had health challenges growing up. I was a little bit overweight all the time. Even though I like played sports and worked out, it was just kind of like, what's why my brother was super skinny. It's like I had physiognomy or or whatever, and I had digestive issues and just like plagued me, and they were really kind of normalized because my parents aren't really doctors or anything. They're just are living, and so health has always been on my mind, and really like my health and my energy have always been my number one priority in my life, because it's just so obvious how different of a quality of life I have when my health is good and my health is not good. And so, yeah. And so I was really led towards, eating good quality foods, whole foods, kind of led to the paleo movement like 11, 12 years ago. And, within that movement, it started to talk about sourcing good quality meat. And, I never, I think in our world, we have this perception that we have different perceptions of what health is. And, one of them is being vegan. And luckily I never went down that road because I just generally don't think it's healthy. And so, I was led down the road of eating good quality meat. And so the first thing I kind of did was I looked at, all the local farms within, an hour or 2 hours from Toronto. And they're, first of all, very difficult to find. These farms don't really do any marketing. They're not really anything but farmers, because, farming is a full-time job. It's very challenging. And so I found a few of these farms, went to the farms, met the farmer, bought basically like a whole cow and made this like part of my health, whatever you call it. It's my process of like sourcing meat. I just stopped purchasing meat from grocery stores. Even when I went out for dinner, I would rarely have red meat because I just always had it at home. I would usually have like chicken or fish or something or whatever. And so, this whole process of like buying an animal, taking it home, and, obviously it's like butchered and like, not buying well, although maybe one day, and I would store it in my freezer, and I would have meat for the whole year, and the interesting thing is here is like, you don't just get like the tenderloins and the best cuts of steak. You get the organs, you get the heart, the liver, the
Yeah.
bones. And for a while, I didn't really know what to do with the bones. Like I've kind of heard about broth. We have like, dishes in our cultures. I'm sure you do too, that
Yes.
always use bones, but nothing really like stuck for me until I really started to discover just through like really, like I would say, very niche health circles that were talking about collagen and we're talking about the benefits of consuming bone broth and all that.
Mm.
And again, this was I think in like 2015 when I first actually just like heard of bone broth, as like a health thing.
Yeah.
So I started making it myself. I started drinking like 1 to 2 cups every day, and it was just very obvious to me that this was like a really different food and different, something that was like really a value add to my whole health regimen and my life. And so, yeah, I think at that point it was pretty obvious. There was nothing in the market that was premium at all. Like there just didn't exist. And then that's when I set out to
Mm.
decide I was going to take that leap and make it myself.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I really love when the founder has actually a story that's linked to the actual product, and this is like your real life experience and your health that led to for you to create this product. This is pretty amazing. This kind of products were not very trendy like
Yeah.
at the beginning. It's only like in the past 2 years that everybody's talking about bone broth and all of that. So, how did you take the product and first introduce it to the market?
Yeah. I mean, so this is one of the most difficult things, I think, for any new business that is trying to create a category, because this is essentially what it is. And like you can go and create let's say like you can create a new collagen brand today and everyone knows what that is, but like you are now in a sea of multiple competitors, you really don't have, but the easy
Mm,
thing, you don't have the need for education, and so you
mm,
can like, throw up a landing page, start selling, but you probably won't go that far at this point. With us, it was like, yeah, it was so early into the bone broth trend that very few people actually knew about it. And the amount of education we actually had to do was very challenging and almost like enough of a reason to quit multiple times. Like,
yeah.
actually, it's like it gets to a point where you're like, I don't know if this is ever going to catch on. Like I actually in my gut, I felt as though it will, because
Mm,
it was just, it's to me, like I'm the consumer. I'm always pretty early to trends in the health space. So just to see like the kind of the pieces of the puzzle of like, how this would come to market, it made a ton of sense to me. But, it was a lot of painful, like the first few years were very painful in terms of, not getting that much growth at the beginning, like really just trying to improve the product and figure out supply chain and figure out production. Because, at that stage, there was nobody actually producing a premium quality bone broth,
mm.
even in like the food manufacturing space. So that was all new. So yeah, it was just like constant education until, at some point it started to stick. And at some point, I think what happened was like, naturopaths, for example, have been always talking about bone broth and more of them started to talk about it. More like nutritionists started to talk about it. And I think that started to like actually help out like the credibility behind bone broth. And then eventually, like things just start to trickle with the world we're in now.
So basically, you had to really go out and seek those early adopters of the product because regular people, like people who are the followers, let's say,
Yeah.
had no idea. So usually when you start, it's like your mom and your dad and your cousin and your friend and all of that.
Yeah.
But you actually had to go and seek these people who will adopt your product while
Yeah.
nobody else is doing that. So you talked about naturopath and nutritionists and all of that. But how did you get your very first client who's not family or a friend?
Yeah. Well, we did a few trade shows in Toronto, like consumer facing trade shows. So these are ones where like the public can come in and try different products and excuse me. And at these shows, like there's a lot of, early stage food companies from the Toronto area, really trying to sell their product and explain why they're great. And yeah, I did that. I did maybe like 4 or 5 of those, and it was actually a really good way to just understand what the market, like what that niche health market was looking for, and if they had heard about it. A lot of them actually had, surprisingly at that stage, like, oh yeah, I've heard about this. I've never like tried
Mm.
it, seen it anywhere. Also just getting feedback on the flavors. Like our first flavors were just horrific, it was, it was funny. We had quite a few iterations to get to the point that we're at now,
Mm.
packaging to flavors and everything. So those were definitely the early days of trying to get out there and trying to get in front of people.
Yeah. And then did you make any sales during that event?
Yeah, some. Yeah.
So,
No, we definitely
okay,
we sold
good
some
enough.
like we had bottles at the time and we definitely sold some. It wasn't the intention wasn't to like make much money at these shows. It was mostly like
Yeah.
information that we were gathering and the feedback
Mm.
was important.
Yeah. Let's move on to how you came up with your branding. How did you decide? Like, let's talk about the marketing side of everything.
Yeah.
Did you do the branding, the packaging, and all of these by yourself, or did you have help from, I don't know, a consultant, an agency? Like, how did you proceed with that, especially at the beginning where you're not selling enough, you don't have the bigger budgets, and all of that? How did you do all of this?
Yeah, so we worked with branding agency to get things going, and to be honest, it was kind of needed at the time. I had zero experience with products, and I had nothing. I didn't even know what to look for at that time. I was just mostly found somebody that was pretty good in terms of like the work that she had done, and yeah, we got a different look and idea of like, okay, how do you actually build a brand? And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I think, obviously looking back, there's a lot of things that, you might do differently, especially
Mm.
when you first go. But I think overall, I'm like really happy with the branding right now and the name. It's cool. Like I like the name and it's just everything around the brand. It just feels like, yeah, it's cool. It's like it's a nice, yeah, we definitely had help on
Talking about the name, how did you come up with it?
it. I mean, it was really just an exercise in like coming up with a name with this consultant, and essentially we were really like trying to avoid saying bone broth in our name, and we really wanted something that was like very simple and easy to say, and a lot of like big brands, for example, have made up names that are like
Yeah.
that are 2 syllables, like Nike, Vega, for example, is another one. And yeah, that's kind of like where it came from. And like the bro and the ya is like, Broya is like, it's kind of phonetically pleasing in some ways. So
Mm.
it was just like, we want a made up name so that, let's say bone broth actually never, never takes off, like never happens. We can actually go into another category without pigeonholing ourselves into just bone broth.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
like that. It's
Yeah.
it's I agree with everything you're saying. It's a name that you can do anything with. Now you're stuck with the food category and the health food. You can't change that. People know your brand, but
Right.
just in case it doesn't work out with the bone broth, like you would have been able to do something else with it.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. And then how did you like I know it's a learning curve. Every single product creator or like direct to consumer brand founder, they just do the product, it's something that's like they are creating and they want to put out in the market. But as you said earlier,
Right.
you didn't know what you need to do, and then you went to the branding agency. How did you also decide about all the marketing activities that you're going to do?
Okay. So I think like as a general rule, I don't know anything. Like, like that's the take. That's the take that I approach business and really life in general is kind of this like beginner mindset in a lot of ways of like, I don't know shit, and the stage that I'm at now is likely not going to be like what I did to get here to the next stage. And so
Mm.
anything I try to learn or do to get to the next stage, I always look to find people who just walk that path, like literally the
Mm.
path, ideally, like
Mm.
maybe not, maybe not in the food space, but maybe in, health and beauty. But like somebody who just went to 10 million in revenue and that's where I'm going. So go find that person and make sure that they operated, similar to me and they have a lot to offer to me, and so
Mm.
I think, I've been pretty good at that. And so I've been good at finding those people and like, whether it's like paying them for being a consultant or mentor or whatever, or like giving them, like I have like 3 advisors now that, have advisor shares in my company that have like provided tremendous amount of value to me over the years.
Mm. Mm.
Really wouldn't be here without them. So yeah, early on the marketing side, I actually didn't take that approach, and I like really just went into retail because it was kind of the way to go, and we actually like failed at retail early on. I would say it was like a pretty big failure because we just didn't have the right product and didn't really understand what it took to actually grow in retail. Even though like we got up to like 300 or 400 stores, we weren't getting the turns that we needed in order to be successful. And then, it was kind of at a sticking point there in like late 2019, early 2020, where it was essentially, it was kind of the decision that I would take to either really like not go any further into retail. It just wasn't going to happen. So it was either like, hey, let's go into e-commerce and see if this works, and if it doesn't, like, I think we just shut the company down. Like that's kind of like where we were at.
Yeah.
And I had a couple friends in e-commerce who, just they saw our numbers in the e-commerce, like we weren't advertising that much, maybe a few $1,000s a month in ads. But we did have some customers who were just ordering like every month online. And so, a few of my friends in the space were saying like, hey man, like there's actually something here. Like you should really explore
Mm.
this. And so that's when I decided, I was like, okay, let's put everything into e-commerce, and, it proved to be a really fruitful decision for sure. So yeah, we grew like 3x and then 2x the next year. And yeah, now we're at a good space.
So now you only sell online. You don't have points of
No,
sale or anything?
no, we have retailers. We've been working with the
Okay.
same distributor for about 5 years now. And we've been in Whole Foods for about that time in Ontario, and yeah, probably like 100 to 150
Mm.
retailers now. Yeah. And all of them, I would say like 90% of them in Ontario at this stage. And we're starting to expand out west now.
Okay. And most of your sales are e-com, or is
Yeah.
it your points of sale?
Yeah. 80% is e-commerce. Right.
Wow. Okay. I love this. I
Yeah.
love this because people tend to be, most of the people I work with, they tend to be, no, I want to, sell wholesale to this, the big stores and all of that. Like you said, Whole Foods and stuff like that. They find it easier to like just send a bulk quantity to a store instead of selling one by one.
Yeah.
But I like this that you're an example that you can actually scale your brand doing e-com, and 80% of your sales are from your website, which is really amazing. If we go back to marketing, I'm going to tell you about a challenge that I have with
Yeah.
people I work with, and I want to see what you did in this situation, or if you were in such a situation. So
Right.
most people, smaller brands, they don't have big budgets to create these big productions and all those videos and
Yeah.
content that are on social media. So one of the things that I ask them is to put themselves out there, tell their story, like you told us your story today, and then be present in some of the videos and not all of them.
Yeah.
Fun fact, yesterday I got an ad from Broya, and you were telling your story.
Yeah. Awesome.
So is that the only place where you tell you about your story, or do you appear on social media? Do you have an issue with showing yourself and telling your story?
Yeah. It's a good question. First of all, that ad is doing really well for us.
Yeah.
And in general, any founder ad we throw out there has done well. And it's something that so I don't have a problem being in front of camera. Like I actually like it. It's actually super fun for me. It's more around like I don't have I don't have a team dedicated to
Mm.
like that, so when it comes to creating content, it's like I'm coming up with like ideation. I'm actually doing the filming. I don't edit, but like I'll send it to our editor and stuff. And I actually just, funny that you asked, because like I actually just brought on an organic social agency to do this, because there were just too many signs, like too many winners, like ads that were winning with like me telling my story and like me talking and whatever, that I brought on this organic social agency to focus on that, to like,
Yeah.
okay, let's start actually like, putting a process together where I'm going to film, I'm going to give it to you, you're going to edit, they're going to post on organically on Instagram.
Mm.
We're going to run some of those on ads and really start to have like the founder story as a pillar of our content marketing. I think it's like, yeah, it's the one thing where like I, I've been telling myself to do this for over a year, and now I'm
Yeah.
pieces in place, but yeah, I got a little complacent on that. So yeah,
Well, if you can have someone to like follow you around,
that'd be great.
uh, then you'll have content constantly. Like if you're doing meetings, if you're, I don't know, in trade shows, I don't know what exactly you do on a daily basis, not necessarily on a daily basis, but if you have something that's already
Yeah.
content that you can just cut and edit and like
Yeah.
put it
I,
out there.
yeah. I think the Gary V style is actually like, I mean, he was pretty bang on about it. It's like the guy's a
Yeah,
marketing genius, and he basically just said, get a camera guy and follow you around. And
exactly.
that's the way you do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I am seeing that a lot. I go to events and I see like this one person with a tiny camera following the other one. I'm like, oh my God. It's a pretty interesting thing, but usually business owners, they just don't have enough time or like
Yeah.
the mind space to think about what they need to create, or like
Yeah.
now we're recording this podcast, and you can also put a tripod next to you and like, record yourself with your phone. But we just don't think about these things. And it's just tiny habits that we need to do in order for us to create more content. But I love this. So your advice is to just show yourself, tell your story, because from your experience, all the founder stories that you did, founder ads, let's say, are the ones that are performing better.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
look, like I do think there is something to say about like, some founders are just super shy, and
Yes.
they're not like, it's a little bit harder to, you know, be engaged with them, like, my beard helps actually. Like this is like, you know, I'm not even saying like that's actually like a proven thing that like when you have a beard, it like stands out more, and like people are more like it's easier to grab attention.
Really
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
interesting.
something that I don't know if you've heard of Alex Hormozy, but like he talks.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it helps, and like I think things like this,
Mm.
there needs to be something that's like somewhat memorable. And
Yeah.
then if you're like really shy and like all that, then maybe it's not the right thing, and
Mm.
but like if you can really get out there and work on that, I think it's super powerful.
Mm. Pretty amazing. What is your advice to someone who's starting now and they're frustrated and they just can't sell enough products to live,
Mhm.
that kind of beginner phase, and everybody who's buying is their friend or their cousin or somebody they know? What is your advice for them?
I mean, I think I think well, first of all, we're heading into pretty tough times. So first, it's like, don't be too hard on yourself with like where we're going. But I think the most important thing is like, business in some ways is simple, but very challenging, but simple, and simple in the sense that like you have revenue, and then you have, your costs of goods sold, and then you have your operating costs. And then it's like, but really it's like, what is your contribution margin is just like revenue minus COGS, and I think that's the biggest thing we need to be working on these days, or entrepreneurs need to be thinking about, is like, what is that contribution margin? And, you can make your life a lot easier if your contribution margin is like 70%, 80% versus like 40%, or
Mm.
even 50. Like
Yeah.
things get really hard, when your contribution margin is small. And I would honestly even just like stop a business. Like I would not start a new business unless it like actually had an attractive contribution margin. So
Mm.
you can make your life a lot easier once you start to, look at that. And then obviously you need a product to sell. So always
Yeah.
improve product is important.
You also mentioned that you are surrounded by people who help you, and without them, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think is very important for someone to be able to scale the brand?
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the natural state of an entrepreneur is just like being blind, and so whatever you can do to, open up some of those blind spots is just a win, and then really the point is to like just do whatever you can in order to like talk to whoever you can who can actually help you uncover these blind spots, because you don't know where you're going and you're just trying to make good guesses that like what's the right place to actually go. And sometimes you get it right, most of the time you get it wrong, but when you get it right, you have to go, and you have to like be very certain that this is the way to go. And it helps to have people who have been there to tell you like, hey, that is the way to go, Yeah. And that gives you more confidence over time. And eventually, you just keep running.
Yeah, totally agree. Even me, I'm a service-based company, but the same thing. When I'm alone, I don't see things clearly, or I know them, but it's like in my blind spot, and I don't pay attention to that. But once I have a conversation with someone, I'm part of different mastermind groups and I have coaches, when I have these conversations with them, I just get more clarity and more certainty on some decisions, which is really amazing. Nima, we're approaching the end of this episode, and I usually like to ask a series of 3 questions. It just like quick answers, nothing scary. Don't be afraid.
And
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
They would probably describe me as this weird dude who likes to go to farms and talk to farmers. And yeah, I know. I mean, people call me the bone broth guy, it's like, and really like, kind of circling back to scratching my own itch with this thing. It's like, this is kind of what I do with everything in life is like, there's something that I feel as though is not to my standards, or just like, it just annoys me because I know there's something better. I'll just go really deep into that area, and ultimately like find the best thing, whether that's just like, it's not starting a business and everything, but it's like for personal use or whatever. So I think, my friends would probably say that I'd be in that way, and so, yeah.
So, your product was mainly a solution to your problem.
Yeah.
But also, there are so many people out there who might have the same problem, and that's why they're buying your product.
Right.
Do you have any like story or like a special thing that happened with a client because of or thanks to your product?
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot for sure. I guess like one that sticks out to me, there's this guy, I think he's from Quebec actually, but he's got this like, I think he's got an Italian name. I forget his name.
Okay.
He was like, just his email was like, you could tell it was like this Italian kind of like, and I grew up with like some of my best friends are Italian. So it's like,
Yes.
it feels good to hear it, but he was saying like, yeah, my dad is like 89 years old and he had cancer and like he fought cancer and he was like, drinking your product, and he swears that it like a big part of it was like due to drinking your product, and like, okay, I'm not saying
Yeah.
broth cures cancer. Like, this is not medical advice.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that like, it's amazing to hear something like that where it's like, wow, this guy was like super sick. And, obviously he did so many other things. Like he was probably really taking care of his health, but he was drinking our product too. And he loved our product, and just the excitement that comes from, a customer and that says that, this was such a life-changing thing for us. It's like, really feels good to hear that, it's amazing. Yeah.
I love this. I love when somebody's product actually makes a change in a person's life. I'm pretty sure you feel amazing every time you receive one of these testimonials.
I still get every review come straight to my inbox.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Question number 3. Is there a book that changed your life and that you would recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I would say like the probably the number one book that, and I think like books are interesting because it's more of like there's the right book for the right person at the right time,
Mm,
Um,
so true.
yeah. But for me, I read a book was Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. And then I also read Black Swan by him and Skin in the Game. But Anti-Fragile was my first read by Taleb. And that really just like blew my mind open in so many ways, and I ended up reading it like 3 times actually. But yeah, you get something new from it every time. He's a genius, this guy.
Yeah,
But
he is. Yeah.
you're Lebanese, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you would know.
Yes, he's from the north of Lebanon where I'm from.
Yeah, yeah, he's quite a character, but
Mm,
he's obviously a genius, and like his whole just his whole philosophy around anti-fragility and all that is quite incredible. And I'd recommend everyone to just read it because it's just a good book for life
yeah.
and really for business, and like for everything.
I should definitely get that. I did read The Black Swan, but this one, no. I'll add it to my list. Actually, on my Instagram, every month we decide on like one book, and then I try to read one book a month at least, but we decide on one book, and then I'm gonna do this for one of the months this year. So, for our audience, where can they find you and your product? Which accounts should they follow?
Yeah, so we're at broyaliving.com, Broya living.com, and that's our Instagram as well. We're active on Instagram mostly. We're not really on TikTok anymore. We do have TikTok. Yeah, we're on.
Why?
It just wasn't really like doing much for us, so we
Okay.
decided to stop it basically.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But Instagram.
Or perfect. Perfect. Thank you for being a guest on my podcast. And to all the listeners, I'll be back next week with a new episode.